Now, this is an area where there's going to be enormous trust. The person who's going to stand surety has to trust you. They are not going to stand surety for you if they do not trust that you're going to pay them back eventually. So they stand surety for you. And if anything goes wrong, the bank is going to go after them for the security because you don't have the security. There's personal credit. You can use personal credit, credit cards, loans, etc. to finance a deal. You can use equity gearing, where you've got a property or another asset, and by doing that, you can gear that property or equity in order to then buy another property. So you say, here's my equity. You go to the bank. I've got a house that's worth $1 million, but I've only got a bond of 200,000. You then use that equity of 800,000 within that property as your security in order to raise the money to buy your next property. There's asset financing. You can use your asset as the financing tool. There is partnerships. You can bring a whole lot of people together to partner with you in order to put money in to purchase a property. There's seller finance. I spoke about this earlier. I'm currently doing a deal like that, where you use the seller's money in order to purchase the property from him. There's owner finance. There's venture capital. There's private finance. Angel investments. This is really people who believe in you and they're just putting money in because they trust what you and they trust what you're going to be doing with their money. There's rent to buy, where you are, where somebody funds the property for you and you rent from them over a period of time. And then after that period of time, you then buy back the property from them. There's places like iRent2Buy. If you go look at irent2buy.co.za, that is a platform that you can use in order to purchase a property using the rent-to-buy strategy. There's the rent-to-rent strategy. I spoke about that earlier on, where you rent from somebody and you rent it out to somebody else. And there's you can use a combination of those and a whole host of other financing opportunities. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. That is, let me just get my video back up again. So that is strategy, property, area, and finance. I think that's enough for today. We're already on 11:20. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But again, go and look at my videos on the financing side, because that is very important. If you're going to go and look for property and you don't have your own money, you need to know how to use other people's money. And Dumiso, that's it from me. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Nigel. It was very informative. It's amazing that property investment is so simple, but yet so complicated. Because if you miss, like the point that you said there, of checking out the numbers in terms of how many people are selling and how many people are renting out. If you just go, you find a property and you think it's cheap, you go, you buy it, and then later you find out actually that the property was cheap because people are actually moving away from the area because it's infested by criminals, people are selling drugs and all of that. You will find yourself having bought that property and you will stuck with it for many years and making losses and losses and losses. I'm just saying that it's so simple. It's something that you could quickly find out on Property 24 without you having spent any money. Just a bit of time would save you millions and millions of rands. And I would encourage, like you said, people to go into your website on property financing. I know I've watched it several times. There's I think property financing you're doing with Anthony. I forgot his surname now. Anthony, is it what, Leppenberg or something like that? But that's a very informative.
Anton it's Engelbrecht. Yeah, I think it's Engelbrecht.
Yes, yeah. That's a very informative session that you had there, and I would encourage everyone to go there. Spiwe, I'm not going to waste time.
Sorry, it's Breitenbach, Ndumiso. Anton Breitenbach. Let's not get his name wrong.
Thank you, Nigel. Mr. Lituli, you've been Chisarin. You've been, yeah. You can get on, and for the rest, for you ladies and gents, please keep your hand up, and then we can take your questions.
Thanks, Ndumi. So just one quick question to Nigel. In terms of the flipping strategy, I just wanted to ask around the tax. When you buy the property from someone and then you are quickly selling it off, how does the tax work there in terms of the capital gains tax? I'm not sure the pros and cons from that perspective.
Look, in any strategy, doesn't matter what you do, there are going to be tax implications. How you structure the deal determines how little tax you pay. So, I mean, I can talk for days about tax and how to structure your deals, but your best bet is to talk to your tax consultant. If you're going to do a flip deal and you're on sell, you're either going to pay capital gains tax or you're going to pay normal income tax. Again, depending on how you structure the deal, what type of deal it is. When it's residential, there's no VAT involved, for example. But, you know, so you need to look at that deal very carefully. The bottom line is you are going to pay tax. You cannot get away from the fact that tax must be paid. How little tax you pay is all in the detail on how you structure. If, for example, you've got a business and in that business, you register it as a business that buys and sells property. Property then becomes your stock. So then it's like buying and selling any asset, any product, cell phones, glasses, mics. It becomes a product that you're selling. So with that, you then pay normal income tax, which then means that you pay 28% because it's a company, but you can write off a whole lot of expenses against it. You can write off your administrative costs. You can write off your own salary. You can write off staff costs. You can write off office costs, your rental of your office space. You can write off literally anything that relates to running your business. So you end up paying a lot less than the 28% on the profit of that deal, because you've created a structure where property is actually stock and it's not an asset. If you don't create a structure like that, and the asset is purely an asset that you are buying and selling, then you have to pay capital gains, and that's 14%. So whatever profit you make on that deal, again, there are certain aspects, certain things that you can write off against it, like your legal costs and your transfer duties and so on. But you can't write off your office costs. You can't write off your own salary, etc. It is purely how much did you buy it for and how much did you sell it for, less the cost incurred in selling it. And the difference is the profit that you've made on that purchase and sale. And then that profit would be taxed on capital gains. So again, whatever you do, you're going to have to pay tax ultimately, either today, tomorrow, or in 10 years' time. There are ways that you can defer your tax where you don't have to pay tax immediately. You can pay it where you're rolling over within a property, within a company. We've done this many times where we've purchased property and then we sell it and we buy new property with that same money and we then roll over the tax over a period of time. Then instead of paying when you've sold it, you pay in 10 years' time, because eventually only in 10 years do you really realize the profit. So again, there are many ways that you can structure it, but you are going to pay tax at some time or another. Today, or 10 years or 20 years from now, you are going to pay tax. It's all in the structuring, how little. Talk to your tax consultant. That's the best bet.
Thank you, Nigel, for that.
Thanks, Luthuli. Malichama.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ndemiso, for the opportunity, and Nigel for always coming with very impactful sessions here. We are learning a lot. So I wanted to ask, in terms of the whole flipping deals and sourcing, right? So you speak about having a stability fund certificate or something like that. I hear a lot about it, but can you give us more info as to maybe can it be something that we consider getting in the future? And what does it actually entail? And then my second question, so you spoke about buying property in a place where the growth, I don't know, of the prices, I'd assume, is higher than the inflation. So how do we go about determining that growth? Because I heard you spoke about the cost and everything, but how will I actually determine that the growth of the prices exceeds inflation? And then the third question, which is the last question. So you spoke about having a legal, representative in most of the deals that we are getting into. So, because I know the different types of lawyers, is it a commercial lawyer, or which types of lawyers would we engage in such processes? So yeah, thanks.
Okay, so yeah, you've asked. I didn't realize you were going to ask more than one question. Otherwise, I would have written it down. But I hope I think Nomiso caught them also. Let me start with the attorney. The attorney that you choose depends on the type of deal you're going to do. So if you do the commercial structured deals and so on, then obviously you need a commercial lawyer. If you're going to just do a simple one-off with just a transfer, then you only need a transferring attorney. In most cases, as an investor, you need a transferring attorney and a trusted, somebody who also does trust structuring, and somebody who understands commercial structuring and so on. So in general, as an investor, you need an all-round, somebody who understands all of the different aspects of trusts, of structuring, of tax, and sometimes commercial structuring, and then also transferring. So that's the type of attorney that you require in general as an investor, somebody who's an all-rounder. Or if you're doing lots of deals and big deals and whatever, then you can afford to have multiple attorneys. You can have somebody who's focused on commercial structuring, somebody who's focused on tax, and somebody who's focused on transferring, a transferring attorney. So again, it just depends on the size of the deals, and if it's small, just get yourself a transferring attorney. If it gets bigger, get yourself a commercial structuring attorney. If it's sort of in between, you need somebody who understands all of them. Okay. What was that second question again, Ndumiso?
The fidelity certificate.
Oh, the fidelity fund certificate. Yeah. So if you want to earn commission on a deal, or you're a property practitioner that sells property, effectively anybody who's involved in the sale of a property has to have a fidelity fund certificate. That's what the new property practitioners bill is all about. Now, there's a bit of debate backward and forward as to who all must have a fidelity fund certificate, and there'll be some clarity over the next couple of months about it. But I believe that anybody who's involved in the sale of a property has to have a fidelity fund certificate. Now, what that means, that doesn't mean that if you own a property and you want to sell it, that you have to have a fidelity fund certificate. The person who's going to sell it for you, who's the real estate broker, that's the person who needs it, because they're going to get a commission. You own the property. The person who owns the property doesn't have to have a fidelity fund certificate. That's why I say doing the not the flipping deals, but the sourcing deals is so difficult or so dangerous, because there you're never going to own the property. You are actually an agent trying to sell the property. So therefore you need to have a fidelity fund certificate, in my opinion. There are some other people who disagree with me. I personally believe that you need to have an FFC if you are doing sourcing deals. You can try it and get away with it because the receiver isn't going after anybody yet, and the EIB isn't going after anybody yet. But I guarantee you, by 2021, they're going to start going after people, and the attorneys are going to be forced not to pay commissions out to people doing sourcing deals. I can almost guarantee you that. So an FFC is a fidelity fund certificate that you get when you do a real estate agency course. You must learn how to be a real estate agent in order to get a fidelity fund certificate. That you get from the Estate Agencies Affairs Board. The Estate Agencies Affairs Board is the government regulatory body that oversees all estate agents and property practitioners. So you need to have a fidelity fund certificate if you want to be involved in the sale of property and take a commission. If you do not have one, the attorney by law is forced to hold onto your money until such time that you produce your FFC, and when you produce your FFC, they can then pay you your commission. Legally, they cannot pay out that commission, and it has to sit in trust until such time that you produce your Fidelity Fund certificate. So be very careful there. You need to have that if you're going to be a property practitioner and you're going to be involved in the sale of a property. In order to get it, the easiest way is to, if you have a degree of sorts, there are certain degrees that you have that will exempt you from doing certain things, like being part of a learnership, where you don't have to be part of the learnership. You go and write the board exam. You're exempt from all sorts of things. You're exempt from even paying because we are non-white. You can then apply for all of those exemptions, write the board exam, and get your FFC. But if you don't qualify for any of those exemptions, you've got to do a 12-month internship in a real estate agency, and then do 3 months of training, and then write your board exam. You get a NQF level 4 qualification, and then they give you a certificate. If you're working in an estate agency already, then you work under your principal agency's FFC. Then you are automatically a licensed broker, because you're working under your principal's FFC. Once you qualify, you get a level 4, NQF level 4 qualification. You then get a license, but that's not a principal. You need to have NQF level 5 in order to have your own agency. If you have NQF level 4, you have to work for an agency. If you have NQF level 5 and you're a principal, you can have your own agency. You can then either buy a Pam Golding agency or a CEIF agency, or create your own, like I've done. I've got EDPF realtors because I'm a principal. I can now host, and I can host here at my incubator, which we are going to do now from January. I can have real estate interns who come and work here for me. They fall under our banner, and they go out and they sell property, or they source property, or whatever they want to do. In the meantime, they're going through our course. It's a 3-month course. And then after the 3 months, they write the exam, the board exam. They get the FFC, but only after they've done the 12 months internship here with us. They can then trade with us during those 12 months, but afterwards they have to work under the banner of an estate agency, even after the 12 months. If you want to be a principal, you've got to do even more. You've got to write the NQF level 5 board exam, and then you get a principal agency and you can have your own. Ndumiso, what was that first question?
How do we, you said we need to buy properties that are growing more than the inflation rate.
Oh, yeah, more than inflation. Okay. So how you do that is you do your research. You look at the history of the area. So you go and run a Lightstone report, for example. And you say, okay, for that area, you can run area reports. You can run individual property reports. You can run provincial reports. You can run national reports. When you run that report, you first run the property report. And you look at, over a period of, say, 10 or 20 years, at the growth every year of that property in value. So let's say 20 years ago, somebody bought that property for 100,000, but today it's worth 2 million rand. So then you average out the growth between 100,000 and 2 million, and you say, oh, there's 2,000% growth on this. Annually, that's 20%. This is a good area to be in because the growth in this area has been good. But then you also look at the future and you say, okay, you talk to real estate agents, you talk to people in the area, you talk to professionals who understand that community and that area, and you say, what is the demand? Is there great demand in this area? If there's great demand, then chances are the value is going to increase, because with great demand comes growth in value. With less demand comes reduction in value. You need to understand the economics of property. In fact, of any asset, anything you buy, where there's more demand, that product or service becomes more expensive. If there's very little demand, then that product or service or asset becomes, the price then decreases. So if there's great demand in an area, then you know that for future, the property is, for the near future at least, the property is still going to increase in value. But then you must look at that value increase over the last couple of years and say, on average, how much has it increased? And has it increased over 6 or 7%? Then you know on average every year, it's increased more than inflation. And if there's demand, then you know that growth is going to continue. Then you know that it's going to increase more than inflation. If the growth has been lower than inflation in the past, coming forward to today, then you must be very skeptical and make sure that you buy way below value, because then you've still got that margin that you can, even though it grows lower than inflation, that at least you've created that margin of value between what the market value is and your property that you bought, that margin is enough to cover the lower growth over a short period of time. But then I would recommend you actually sell before you get to that point where that margin has reduced to a point where the margin is zero, and then inflation now becomes higher than your growth. So I would then recommend that you sell while there's still a bit of fat. But I would not even buy property where the growth has been less than inflation. I would only buy property where growth in the value of that property over the last 10 or 20 years has been much higher than what inflation was.
Thank you, Nigel. Nzuzo's iPhone.
Oh yeah. Hello.
Dembo.
How are you? Morning, everyone. Nigel Dumiso. Thank you for the wonderful session. This is incredible. I just want to thank you. I got questions, so many questions, but I'm going to limit them. The first question I have for you, Nigel, we were talking about flipping, and there's this issue that you're either buying using your own name or you're using your company. Okay, my scenario is I do have a property company. However, when I buy the properties, I buy them using my name. So I just want to check whether is that a bad idea? They are still recorded in my company, but when I buy them, I use my personal name, because at this point I buy maybe 2 or 3 a year and sell them the following year.
Oh.
So I just as an advice, because maybe I might have not been advised properly, I do not know. And then the second question, since the FFC certificate, I'm an aspiring developer. Does one need to have this certificate if you look at a case where I buy land, I build a 2-bedroom house and I sell it, but I normally use agents, estate agents, to sell the property for me, because they usually source the land for me or source the property where I'm going to buy and flip. However, I don't do the selling myself. But maybe in the future, if people start approaching me direct, I may end up taking that route. So what would be the advice? What do I have to have it, or looking at the future, that I rather just have it to safeguard myself? I'm gonna leave it there for now. Thanks.
Okay, so let me answer your second question first again. The answer is yes. I would recommend you go and get your FFC. There are obviously, like I said, there are certain exemptions that you can hopefully get. But I would recommend very strongly as a developer that you get your Fidelity Fund certificate. As a developer, there will be certain exemptions that you can get, which makes the time frame much shorter. If you contact my office, ask for, in fact, I will forward the details of the principal agent that deals with EDPF realtors. I'll forward that to Ndumi so he can forward it on to you guys. And you can talk to Charlene. She's the one who heads up my real estate company. She will guide you in the process of what the best way is for you to get your FFC. But the answer is purely and unequivocally yes. If you're a developer And whether you're selling the property yourself or if it's a real estate agent, you have to have an FFC. By next year, there's going to be lots of upheaval in the industry. I can guarantee you that, because you are effectively a property practitioner, and all property practitioners have to have the FFC. Like I said, there are some exemptions. So talk to Charlene about that. Like I said, I'll share that contact with Ndumiso. Then your first question, buying in a property in personal or in a company. As an investor, I would never buy a property in my own name. There are two reasons. Number one, for tax purposes, and number two, to safeguard my family and myself for that matter. If anything goes wrong in any property and you're losing money and the banks come after you, then you personally are going to be held liable, which means that your ITC record is going to be affected, which means that you won't be able to buy property at a later stage until you've cleaned your record. So I would very, very carefully consider going and only buying property in the company. I would have multiple layers because of the strategy you're now using. You're buying properties regularly every year. You're buying 2 or 3, and you've got developments going on at the same time. I would have a development company that does only the developments. Then I would have different companies that deal with the purchase of investment opportunities. I would only buy 5 properties per company, and that's from a tax structuring perspective. I would not own any of those companies. I'd own it through a trust. That trust can own all those companies. That one trust, the property trust or your family trust or whatever trust that is, investment trust, that trust can own all of those companies. The company owns the properties. I would normally only do up to 5 per company. The trust, you are the beneficiary of the trust. You don't own the trust. You can't own the trust, but you're the beneficiary of the trust, which means that you are far removed from the property in terms of any legal obligation. So if anything goes wrong in any one of those companies, it doesn't affect you personally because you are only a beneficiary. You're not an owner. Now, if you're a director, obviously you want to be a director of all those companies. You can be held liable if you have traded recklessly and the bank can prove that you traded recklessly. Then they will hold you accountable. But if you've taken all the precautions and you've invested wisely, they cannot come after you unless you stood surety. If you stand surety, obviously, you're the one who's liable for any payments. So there are a couple of things you need to do. Divorce yourself from the company that owns the property through a trust. You're a beneficiary, you're not an owner. Then number 2, make sure that if you're a director of the company, which you want to be because you want to be in control of it, that you don't trade recklessly. So you don't do stupid things that's going to cause the bank to come after you. And never stand surety for the property that you've purchased. Because if you stand surety, then you are going to be personally liable. Now, when you are new in the game, the bank will insist that you stand surety. And if you're new in the game, then you have to do that. But when you are now 10 or 20 years down the line, and you have many, many properties that you've purchased, and the banks are now have a great relationship with you, you can then say to the bank, I no longer want to stand surety because the property is enough surety for you. And my assets that I have across the investment portfolio is enough surety for you. I don't have to stand surety anymore because I've been in the game for so long. So now I can step back and I say, no longer will my property portfolio affect me even if things go wrong. So, but that comes with time and experience and relationships with your bank. But I would never recommend you purchase in your own name unless you're forced to. If you're forced to for whatever reason, then obviously. But if you're not forced to and you have the choice, buy in a property company that is owned by a trust and you're the beneficiary. It just protects you and it protects your family.
Yeah. Nigel, I just want to clarify or add in Mthembu's question. There is always this confusion or uncertainty in terms of when you do flips, like he was asking. Let's say you do flips only. which one is best? Do you still need to buy through a company, or you can have you can do it in your personal name? There's also what is probably asking. He's got long-term investments. He's got property that is keeping for a long term in the same company as the properties that he wants to buy and flip. But now you just said, I'm not sure whether your advice would be have your long-term investments in one company and the flips do them in another company, or have your long-term investments in one company and do flips in your personal name. Which one do you go with?
Yeah, I would never recommend your personal name. So what I would do, you've got multiple strategies, looks like. So on the one hand, you're doing developments. I would put that in a development company. On the other hand, you have investments for long term, whether that be buy to lets, whether it be multi-lets, whether whatever. You put that in different companies. Everything owned by your trust. Your trust owns everything. You never own anything in your own name. Your companies own the stuff, and the trust owns all the companies. So you've got the one company that's developments, the other company or companies that are investments. And then I would recommend for the flipping deals, you put those deals into a company that is a trader of property. That then means that that's stock. It's not assets. It's actual stock. You're buying it, you're doing some changes, then you're on-selling it. It's like buying anything. You're buying raw materials, you're fixing it up, and then you're selling it as a finished product. So that's really what you want to do in that company from the flipping perspective. That's what I would recommend. But even more than that, don't listen to me. Because I'm talking very generic. Go and talk to your legal professional, go talk to your tax consultant, and go talk to your accountant. Because you've got enough stuff going on that you need to have those three professionals. Put them in a room together and say, guys, this is what I'm doing. Which are the best strategies for me to use to pay the least? Ultimately, everything you're doing here is paying the main thing here is paying the least amount of tax. That's what you want to do. Pay the least amount of tax. And that's why you need your professionals. Put them in a room together and say, I'm doing these three things. What's the best structure for each of them? And they will guide you properly. Generically, what I've just said now is the best option. Development company, property investment company or companies, and your flipping company, which is a stock company where property is actual stock and not an asset. And then all of that owned by your trust, and you're the beneficiary, and you're just getting money from the trust, and the properties are doing all the work for you.
Thank you, Nigel. I don't see any hands. I don't think anyway there's any questions on the chat. So I guess everyone is satisfied. We've had lots of information today. I did say that this was the most critical session, and it shows, in fact, with the quality of questions that we got today and the number of questions that we got, that you guys also understand that this is the ultimate in property investing. So we're looking forward to...
Sorry, let me just cut you there for a second, if you don't mind. I see there's a couple of comments here about having a session on structuring, and I agree fully. You should have a session on structuring. So what I can recommend, Meyer de Waal is, for me, he's the doyen of structuring of all the attorneys I've ever met. I think he knows the most. So I would recommend, and I would ask him then as a favor to me, to come and do a session on structuring. Maybe you were asking after the 5 sessions are done, what's going to be that 6th session? I would ask that maybe we ask Meyer to come and do that session. And maybe he and I can have a conversation here about structuring, like I did with him on the videos that I have. Okay. You can also go and watch the videos under the 50x4 challenge on my website. There are 4 sessions that I've done, that I did with Meyer on structuring your property, your property portfolio. So I would actually ask that we check in with Meyer, ask him if he can do session number 6 and do only structuring, if you don't mind.
No problem with me. And in fact, I really like that. I had my own idea, but I can't say no to such a suggestion. I see someone has already said 100%. They like it, and it seems everyone is in it with us, Nigel. And yeah, this shows the kind of passion that you have of properties, because we did not even talk about the sixth session, and you've already committed yourself, and you all even have a structure in terms of how we can do it. And we're very lucky to have someone like you in our midst, Nigel. Thank you. So ladies and gents, that I think the 12th of December, yes, the 12th of December is settled. We're doing structuring. So there you go. So we have it full. Is there anything else, or must you call it a day? I think it's good to call it a day. Go digest what has been said. If you want, the recording is available for you, for everyone who has paid. Maybe let me qualify. It's available for you. Ask me for the recording. I will send it to you. If you still have questions, let's have a chat. But otherwise, you can still keep them for next Saturday. And then we meet again. Then you can throw those questions. Even from the previous sessions that we have had, you can throw those questions. And then for now, please go have a productive Saturday. I'm doing renovations in one of my properties that I bought not long ago. So yes, I'm going there. We'll have a productive Saturday. And I hope you, ladies and gents, have a productive week. And let's meet next Saturday. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers,
Bye.
cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.
Ngonyama.
Yes, Ndumis. Thank you, Pastor. Now we've been converted again. Thank you very much.
What is that behind you? Is that a virtual screen, or what's that?
No, just a wall. Just a wall. I think it's just wallpaper.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were in the clouds. Okay, Ngonyama.
Thank you very much.
Good weekend, my bro.
You too, bro. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye, Mtembo.
Cheers. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, bro.
All the best for your weekend, man.
You too.
Sure.
Bongana, you still